Good morning. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful that we can come before you each morning to open your word together, and we invite your Spirit to instruct and guide us. And we ask, Lord, that you can help us with our particular needs, the need to understand truth and your power in our lives, and our trust in you in all things. We pray for your angels' care and protection through the evening. And we ask, Lord, that as we study together, that your presence can be here, and help us to stretch our minds so that we can see things that we would not be able to see otherwise. Be with us now, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, good morning, everyone. And what you're looking at here is a diagram that Dwight prepared. This is the gifts that were given. So this is in, if we find it here. This is in this is in Numbers chapter 7. So we had gone to this section can't remember exactly why we went to this section. We were directed to it as we were studying through the inheritance of Manasseh. But anyway, in number 7, it's going to be the gifts that they offer, each of the tribes offer. So it had to do with Manasseh's offering. So we had looked at Manasseh is listed as the 8th tribe that's going to present on the 8th day. So they're going to present, each tribe's going to present on a different day. And there's 12 days. And so we had noticed that when we looked at these offerings, that you're going to have the chargers, the bowls, the spoons, and then there's going to be the number of the bullocks, rams, lambs, kids, goats, oxens, and rams, he goats, and lambs. So different peace offerings, sin offerings, and burnt offerings. So we had noticed that if we had taken this and multiplied it by that a shekel was 12 grams, and we would get these numbers. So we would have the numbers here are the number of shekels that the charger weighs, the silver bowl, and then the golden spoons. And so we had this number 1560, 840, and 120. I don't know, is that big enough for people to see? You could zoom in on this part, maybe. Depends on the device, I guess. And then that's for each of the 12 tribes. So we had noticed that when we added this together, we got 2520. And if we took this number and we multiplied it by 12 for each of the 12 tribes, we get 18720. And this one we get 10,080. So this is a symbol that, well, originally I thought it was 1,080, but 10,080. It does relate to the symbols of time, even though it's got one extra zero in here. And then 1,440. So we know that's 1/100th of 144,000. And this is all of these added together. So you get 30,240. And anybody notice anything about these numbers then that we could derive from them?
Well, you said the 10,000 area is 4 times 2520.
No, well, yeah, so it's 4 times 2520, right? So it's the 4 7 times, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
yes.
Now
Now
it's,
you said that
yeah, go on.
you also mentioned that 1560
Yeah,
was multiplied by 12 for each of the 12 tribes. But I suppose that is multiplied by 12 for the tribes. You were maybe meaning the 12 grams. You
no.
multiply
So,
it by
so what you have is you have 130 times 12 grams, right? So there's 130 shekels times 12 gives you 1560, right?
right. Okay.
And then you multiply that by 12 and you get the 18720.
I was looking on the internet just to see how much the shekel weighed in grams,
Yeah.
and the figure that seemed to be more prominent was 11.4 grams, or sometimes 11.5, sometimes 11.42.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm
they
just
have,
wondering.
yeah.
So I'm just wondering how reliable the 12-gram figure
Yeah, I
is.
know. So yeah, there are different opinions regarding how much a shekel is. Um, so a shekel weight um, in grams. So you're going to see different. I see things like 11.4 grams as pretty common. So we're just saying as a rounded up weight, it's about 12 grams. But there are other views on how much a shekel weighs. Some people have less, some people have more. So if you just go on Google and you say, convert shekels into grams, they're going to have 11.4 grams for the biblical Hebrew shekel. So it's yeah. And this is something that I've been researching is into biblical weights and their relationship to the sky. So to the natural world. So some people just kind of think these are sort of arbitrary, but it seems once you start researching into it that there's a relationship here between these measurements and the universe. So trying to figure that out, that's what's going to be the hard part. But as far as just kind of a rounded off figure that's going to make sense, we would have 12 grams per shekel. So that's the number we're using here. But yeah, I don't think anybody has it exactly as 12 grams. I've seen a couple of places, but those are just sort of, not authoritative places. They just kind of, people like us, right? They'll say there's 12 grams to a shekel. Um, anyways, that help a little bit in that area.
Yes, thanks.
Now, as far as the shekels themselves, um, as far as the symbols themselves, so we know there's 12 tribes. So even when we just multiply the number of all of these shekels, this is going to be 2520 shekels, right? So even without converting it to grams. Right. So because I could do this either way, I could multiply each of these by 12 grams, I would get this number. Or I could just take the 130 and add them together and I get this number.
Yes, I think you're correct.
Yeah. And so since there's 12 tribes and 12 grams per shekel, then it works out that way. Now this then is just 12 times this. So 1560 times 12 is 18720. But we could just argue this is 1/12 of this number. So we can see the relationship between this number and this, even if we didn't have 12 grams in a shekel. Even if it's some other number, we could see that there's that relationship. It's a fraction, 1/12 of this number. And then we also have this number, 120. Of course, we know that multiplied by 12 is 1440. And then we have this number here, 30,240. That's again just taking all of this and adding it together. And this is 2520 times 4. But this is this number 840 times 12. Right? So however we look at it, we can see this relationship between our time and these offerings. Now, we also have, this is the number of animals that are offered. So altogether, it's 252 animals. Now, when does this offering occur? So this is here, let's go back here. So this is Numbers chapter 7. So this is the dedication of the tabernacle. So this is going to be near the beginning of the wilderness wandering before they actually technically are stuck in that situation.
I think Numbers starts on the first day of the second month in the second year after they left Egypt.
Yeah, so
I think you should say that.
yeah, first day of the
Chapter 1.
second month of the second year after they come out of the land of Egypt, right? So that's where the book of Numbers is going to begin. Now they're going to set up the tabernacle of the congregation when? Like they're going to set it up. Do we have a specific date that they set it up? Is it going to be on the first day of the second month?
This month? No, the first day of the first month.
Yeah, okay, so the first day of the first month, they're going to set it up. And then they're going to...
Yeah, we get that in Exodus chapter 40, verse 17.
Okay, so Exodus chapter 40, verse 17. And it came to pass in the first month in the second year on the first day of the month that the tabernacle was reared up. So they're going to set up the tabernacle, and then they're going to keep the Passover, right? Is that what's going to happen?
I don't think it mentions it, but I presume so.
But don't we have that they have a Passover that we've marked from the Passover in the year after they leave?
Yeah, so
But it doesn't mention them keeping the Passover?
I don't think so. But I think it can be understood that they would do that because they were generally obedient at that time.
Just hang on a second here. Now, where did they get where does it first mention that they can have the Passover on the 14th day of the second month? Do you know where that is?
That's yeah, I think that's like Numbers. I think it's 10 or maybe 9. Numbers chapter 9 or 10.
Okay, so it mentions the Passover celebrated here in Numbers 9. So in the first month in the second year after they came out of the land of Egypt. Okay. And the 14th day of this month at even, ye shall keep it appointed season. So when we go back to chapter 7, it says here, it came to pass on the day that Moses had fully set up the tabernacle and anointed it and sanctified it. So this is going to be the second day of the first month then, that they're going to give these offerings. Is that what's happening? So they're going to set up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month. Then on the second day of the first month, they're going to give these offerings.
Well, Numbers is the second month, isn't it? That's
Um,
part of Numbers.
yeah, well, it says on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they came out of the land of Egypt, take the sum of the congregation. But they set up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month. Right. So this is okay. So it starts on the first day of the second month, the book of Numbers, that they're going to do a census, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's how Numbers starts. But we know in chapter 9 that it's going to talk about the first month.
Right. Okay.
Right. So when they set up the tabernacle itself, it says in Exodus chapter 40, verse 17, that on the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was reared up. So even though Numbers starts with this census on the first day of the second month, we know that this is going to be the second day of the first month, Numbers chapter 7. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay.
Right. So they set up the tabernacle, and then the next day, after Moses has fully set up the tabernacle and anointed it and sanctified it, and I assume that he did that all in one day. So that's the assumption that's being made, that they're then going to bring these offerings to the tabernacle. So that's when this is referring to.
Right.
And
Okay.
this is a type of dedicating of the altar that is really going on. That's my understanding of it. So by offering these offerings on the altar, this is the dedication of the altar of burnt offering. And anybody have any thoughts on that? I know we may not have looked at it before. And they're going to do this for 12 days. So if they're doing it for 12 days and they started on the second day, when are they going to be completed?
Passover.
They're going to be completed on the 13th day, right? Because it's an inclusive count. So on the 13th day, they're going to be completed, and then they would keep the Passover on the 14th day. Right?
Exactly.
So Moses sets up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month. And then you have 12 days that they are dedicating the altar. And then they can keep the Passover on the 14th at even. So at the beginning of the 14th, they're going to slay the Passover offering. And that's the only Passover that they keep, besides when they leave Egypt on the Exodus, that they keep while they're in the wilderness, right? That's what we came to understand, that they don't observe the Passover during the time that they're wandering in the wilderness. So when we go back to Dwight's chart here, we can see that the number of offerings that they offer for each of, so here this is for each of the 12 tribes. So each tribe does, for the burnt offerings, there's one bullock, ram, and lamb, one sin offering of the kid of the goats, and then the peace offerings, there's 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he goats, and 5 lambs. So we know for each of the 12 tribes, we just multiply this number times 12, and we get 252. So we have this symbol of 252 connected with this history, as well as if we just take all of the shekels and add them up. So we're not even multiplying them by 12 grams or anything. Those are going to add up to 2520 shekels. Correct? That's how we see it. And then if we take that there's 12 grams per shekel, then we create these other numbers. 18720, 10,080, which is 7 times, the 7 times, 2520 times 4 gives you this many. And if you've ever read Uriah Smith's rejection of the 2520, I think it's in his, it might be in James White's, that's attributed to James White, but it's still Uriah Smith. But Uriah Smith wrote in, I believe it's in the appendix of Thoughts on Daniel and Revelation, and it's also in that January 24th Review and Herald article, which we believe was actually Uriah Smith. But anyway, either way, it's Uriah Smith, where he talks about, well, if there's 7 times is mentioned 4 times, then it must be 10,080 years. And that's just because simply he's multiplying 2520 times 4. But we know, of course, that's not how you would, it's just a mockery type of, it's what they call ad absurdum. That's a type of logical fallacy, so, or rhetorical device. So anyway, we have these symbols. 120 times 12 is 1440, which is 1/100th of 144,000. And any more thoughts on these? I mean, it's pretty interesting that we have these symbols here. And Dwight, we were discussing about the 12 grams. Now, if I just go to Google and I go shekels into grams, it gives me 11.4 grams per shekel.
But remember, you're dealing with the shekel of the sanctuary.
Well, yeah, but do we know much about it as far as exactly how much it would be?
When I looked it up yesterday, everything that I found said that the shekel of the sanctuary was either 12 grams or 0.4 ounces.
Oh, okay. So shekel of the sanctuary.
Yes.
So I wonder why it would be different than the other. Now, somebody says here 11 grams. That's not, that's just a regular shekel. Another one, yeah, so you're always going to get wildly fluctuating views. So here's one that says it's 0.4 ounces or 11 grams. 11.34 grams. 9.6, 9.8. So you're going to get different measurements of the shekel. Now, what I'm working on is I've been doing a bit of research about these weights and measures because I've been fascinated by them. And so this latest book, which I haven't ordered the book, I've just read a paper from it, his basic argument these engineers had worked on. So I'm going to be looking more into these weights. But whether or not we take it as 12 grams, we still have the symbol of the 2520 here in 2 different ways, both with the weight, with the number of shekels that all 12 tribes offer as being 2520, and also the number of animals being 252. It's just that these other numbers, which is 12 times these, that would be dependent on 12 grams per shekel. Okay?
Agreed.
Yeah, so why there's these varying views on weights and measures is a rather complicated issue, but I mean, weights and measures change. Even when we look at, even when people have an idea of what a weight or measure is, you have some kind of a standard that has to be set up, and those standards can vary. So we know like how long a foot is. Well, if you're going to buy a foot of yarn, or a meter of yarn, or a yard of yarn, they had to set up some kind of a standard. And so you'd go to a place where they're going to measure, and they'd have a ruler there. And the reason it's called a ruler is why? Why is it called a ruler?
Because it's your king.
Yeah, so the ruler has set that standard.
Right.
So that you have some way of knowing legally how much a yard is. But some people might have a yard there, and if that measurement changed, they may not change that measurement of that yard. So, and there's things like a dozen. We all know what a baker's dozen is, and that's because it was to cover the baker as far as not having enough weight. So he'd give you 13 instead of 12 to make sure that he wasn't cheating you, because he could be fined if he was cheating you. So this way he avoided all these lawsuits. So, okay, any other thoughts on this?
I was intrigued by the order in which the gifts were given,
Okay.
because when I'm looking at this, of all of the sons, all of Leah's sons present first, but not in birth order.
Okay.
Then you've got Gad, who was the older of the two through Zilpah, who
Yeah.
presents in the 6th position. And then the sons of Raquel are the ones that present 7, 8, 9. And then the ones at the very end are Bilhah's and Zilpah's sons. So 3 of the handmaiden sons.
Okay.
So is there something that we should be noting from the order in which the gifts were given? I mean, that Judah was the first. Here is a symbol of the one through whom Christ would come, the 4th son.
Yeah.
But that Reuben and Simeon would present after Issachar and Zebulun, for me, was an interesting point.
Yeah.
Now, to see that Dan was so far down the list, but in 10th position, 10 being the number of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
that really didn't surprise me. But that Ephraim was 7th was surprising, since both Dan and Ephraim are not mentioned in the names of the gates of the city of New Jerusalem.
Yeah, well, so you're referring to, let me see here. So what do you mean? So the gates of New Jerusalem, isn't that just the same as the list in Revelation chapter 7, or did they name them all?
They name the different sons, and the only ones that are missing are Dan and Ephraim.
You mean in Revelation 7?
Yeah.
Okay.
So who are the other names that replace Dan and Ephraim?
Well,
Joseph and Levi.
yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so
Okay,
I still don't take it that Ephraim's not really mentioned, because Ephraim and Joseph are interchangeable.
I guess I'm looking at it in a different manner.
Yeah.
So, because what you're looking at here with Revelation 7, of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000, tribe of Reuben were sealed,
Yeah.
Gad. You go through the list here, and where is Dan?
Yeah. Dan's removed. He's replaced by Levi.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
okay, but that's Revelation 7. And then when we go into the different gates, I mean, we've got 12,000. This is the sealing of the 144,000.
Yeah.
So the two tribes that were the most noted for idolatry,
Mhm.
and that being again Dan and Ephraim, are not listed as part of the 144,000, and neither are their names listed in the gates into New Jerusalem.
So they list the names as for the gates too.
Yes.
Okay, where is that? What verse? Is
Just
that?
a moment.
I always just thought they just mentioned the 12 tribes. I didn't know they mentioned the names.
Now, am I wrong? But is it in Revelation 21?
Yeah, in Revelation 21, they mention the 12 gates and the 12 tribes, but they don't name the 12 tribes. That's what I always understood, and that's what I see here. So Revelation 21:12, and I had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So they would have had the same names as listed in Revelation 7, but they don't. They don't list the names here. They're going to talk about the 12 apostles as well.
Okay.
Okay, so. All right, so, Joseph is mentioned in Revelation chapter 7. That's the only time he's mentioned. So it's only in Revelation 7 they list the names.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Yeah. And then in Ezekiel chapter 37, so we have this, moreover, this thou son of man, take one stick and write up on it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write up on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. So if you refer to Joseph, you are referring to Ephraim, right? So when it talks in Revelation 7 about Joseph, it's not saying the name Ephraim, but to me, those two names are interchangeable for the names of the tribe. But I think choosing Joseph instead of Ephraim is still significant. So the tribe of Joseph doesn't exist as a separate tribe from the tribe of Ephraim, is basically my point.
I'm intrigued that it doesn't say Ephraim and Manasseh. It says Ephraim alone.
I mean, Ephraim alone. Where? Here?
Yeah.
Okay, but that's because Ephraim is representing the north, right? So this is basically Judah is representing the southern kingdom, and Ephraim represents the northern kingdom, because that's the normal way in which they're named. But they're using the name of Joseph in the place of the name of Ephraim here at the joining of the two sticks. So why would they name Joseph? Because this goes back to our whole study on the two sticks. So we know that
Right.
Judah is actually the one that sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites. When we go back to the story. So he's the one who's responsible for the separation of the two sticks is actuated by Judah when he sells Joseph.
Well, was it actuated by Judah or was it actuated by Simeon? And
Well,
then Judah acted on
that's what I'm saying. Judah acted on it.
it. Okay.
Right. So Simeon suggested it, but Judah acted on it.
Okay.
That's what I understand. But I mean, I sometimes get this story mixed up. I mean, we could go back and look at it, but the reason that it's given here, my understanding, has to go back when Joseph is sold, and the joining of the two sticks, the restoration, is going to happen 22 years later. So the first time the two sticks are joined occurs 22 years after Joseph is sold into slavery. Now, Judah is going to represent later on then the southern kingdom, and Ephraim, one of the sons of Joseph, is going to be the main name they use for the northern kingdom. But when you go to Revelation chapter 7, and it mentions Joseph, Joseph stands for Ephraim, as we can see here. But he's chosen, they're going to choose to say Joseph instead of Ephraim. And here they're going to say for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, referring to the whole kingdom, right? The whole northern kingdom.
Okay.
And for all the house of Israel, his companions. So Ephraim stands in because it's the largest of the tribes, and they often refer to the northern kingdom as Ephraim. So in Revelation 7, they're not going to use the name Ephraim, they're going to use the name Joseph. But Joseph is the tribe of Ephraim, even though Manasseh also is. And so the only tribe that's really removed is the tribe of Dan, being replaced by Levi, that is not reckoned among the tribes. And so there's symbols here that we already relate. So when does the joining of the two sticks occur in our history? And we know that they occurred they didn't occur in Millerite history in the way that they were supposed to, but the joining of the two sticks we understand to be the 22520s. And that in Millerite history, when Protestant falls, it fails, that is, the joining of the two sticks fails in that history. And then it's going to continue in our history. So where does the joining of the two sticks occur?
Well, I'm going to throw an odd curveball. If you look at the chart, the spreadsheet that I sent out,
Okay.
we know that there are 4 periods of 7 times. I mean, Stephen has shown that very clearly in some of the work that he's done. We've addressed this in many ways coming out of Leviticus 25 and 26.
Yeah, so we have the 4 7 times, which are actually in the Bible. They're represented for literal Israel as periods of 70 years, but also a period of 140 years.
Right.
But as far as just as a symbol, there's 4 7 times.
Okay.
Which we established back in 2013. So 4 times 2520 is 10,080.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is with these gifts, when we look at it directly, we have 3 sets of the 4 times, or of the, 3 sets of the 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
So my question would be, was there one set that was a literal for the world, one set that was to have occurred in Millerite history, and one set that was to occur in our history?
Okay, so explain a bit more, 3 sets. So you're saying that there is 4, 4, and 4, so that's 12 tribes. And
Right?
you're saying that each 4 represent,
A completed period of the 7 times. Because the set in Leviticus 26, we have 4 different enunciations of the 7 times.
yeah, just hang on a sec, I'll be right back.
Sure. Now, am I saying this wrong? Are we having trouble with the way that I'm looking at this?
Okay.
Am I saying this wrong? I mean, I'm looking at it that Leviticus 26, that we have 7 times pronounced, and then if you will not, another 7 times, if you will not, another 7 times, etc. Right?
Okay, that's not quite, so here's how I understand Leviticus 26, so let's go there. So you're going to have first the blessings and the curses.
Right.
Whether if you observe the sabbatical rest of the land, you'll have certain blessings, and if you reject it, you'll have certain curses. And then those curses are going to be mentioned from verse 14 to verse 17, and then it says, "And if ye will not yet for all this," here I'm not sharing this properly. And if ye will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you. And what it says literally in the Hebrew is, I will prolong to punish you 7 for your sins. So that word more is the word Joseph. It means to add, or to prolong, or to lengthen. So I will prolong, and the word more doesn't occur after the word 7. It occurs before. I will prolong to punish. It actually occurs before the word punish in Hebrew. I will prolong. So I will more, literally, if you were going to just use these words, I will more punish you 7 times being added for your sins. So I will prolong your punishment, or add to your punishment, which can mean to lengthen it or to prolong it. And then the first one, of course, is the breaking of the pride of the power, your heaven being as iron and your earth as brass. So
Okay.
this is going to be this curse that is going to be put upon them during the period from the captivity of Manasseh onward. And if you will walk contrary unto me and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. Again, this is basically the same idea, except it's going to use the word plagues instead of punish, right? So I will prolong your plagues 7 according to your sins. So the first 7 times and the second 7 times are added together to be
Right.
140 years, and they're going to end with Cyrus coming to the throne and his decree that follows. So that's going to be a period of 140 years. Then this one is, of course, Daniel's captivity. I will send wild beasts among you, the wild beasts being Daniel chapter 7, which are going to rob you of your children, will destroy your cattle and make you few in number, and your highways shall be desolate. So this occurs with Daniel's captivity. Now the next one, the third 7 times, it doesn't have the word more. So you'll notice it doesn't have this. But it says, I will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. And this word yet implies that this is occurring under these first two 7 times. So they are 140 years, but this one's going to begin 10 years after Daniel's captivity. So the yet means while it's still continuing, while these other punishments are going, they don't wait until this second period of 7 times is over. It's going to occur while that's happening. And this is going to be Jehoiachin's captivity in 597. So 10 years, not exactly 10 years, about 9.5 years after Daniel's captivity. And then this one here, and if you're will not for all this hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, then I will walk contrary unto you in fury, and I will chastise you 7 for your sins. And this is going to be the siege and the destruction of Jerusalem in 586. So from 587 to 586. And so then I'll scatter you among the heathen, the land shall enjoy her Sabbaths, all these different things then all apply. So the 4 7 times are not simply here. There's 4 different times that we start these periods, but they're not consecutive one after the other. The first 2 are consecutive, but the other ones occur both under the second 7 times. 10 years after and 21 years after. So, and when then we don't even have, so what some people do is they find 4 different periods of 25, 20 years. And we know there's only 2 different periods of 25, 20 years. And that's because when they apply to spiritual Israel, at the ending point, they're going to start with 2 different periods for literal Israel, and that's going to be from Isaiah chapter 7. So literal Israel gets these 7 times that are then going to be ended by the 3 decrees that start the 2300 days. But we know also that what happens in Isaiah chapter 7 with the land being forsaken of both her kings is also 25:20. That is, it's also a 7 times, but it's the book of Daniel that takes the literal application of Leviticus 26 and extends it to the Millerite period with the 2 different prophecies, the 70 weeks, which transfers the blessings and curses from literal Israel to spiritual Israel, and the 2300 years that then that extends that 220 years of the literal 4 7 times to be a period of 25 20 years. That is 2300 years is added onto 220 years to make a 25-20. I know that's a long explanation, but you see the difference. So there isn't really ever 4 25-20 year periods that can add up to 10,080.
I'm not saying that there are.
No, I know. I'm not arguing against you. I'm just saying that, but it's still symbolized in what happens. Because the 7 times symbolize a 25-20, and there are 4 7 times. So we can see that it still is a symbol of the 4 7 times, 10,080, even if it doesn't literally occur that way. Because I know there are people who want to have 4 periods of 25-20 years, not just 2.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying that there's 4 periods of 2,520 years.
Yeah, I know you're not saying that.
Okay. So I'm noting that there are the 4 7 times. And so my question is that I'm taking those as a set. And so I'm asking if there are 3 sets of the 7 times. 1, in the world, one for the Millerites and one for our own time.
Yeah. So based on your chart then, so I'm still not fully understanding how this relates to the chart. Because you're saying that, because how does the chart tell you that there's,
You have the 12 sons list.
yeah,
Okay. Now, if we look at this in the detail, we have, going back to my own copy. When we look at this, we have 210 shekels multiplied by 4, which gives us 840. Now that 840 or 84, I believe, is also a factor of the 2520.
yeah, well, yeah, because you multiply that by, what is it, you multiply, yeah, how does that work? So,
You would multiply it.
yeah, 3, that's the number you're taking there. 3,
Right.
that's what I thought.
Okay, so all I'm asking, what I was looking at, I mean, it's an odd thought, but it's the way my mind works. Is this representing the sets, these, like the first 4, the second 4, and then the third 4, are they representing sets of the 7-time curses that are applied at different points in history?
I still don't know what you're referring to. So you're saying the literal 7 times, so the period of the 220 years, then the end of that extension to Millerite history, and then to our history. Is that what you're trying to say? That it represents that?
That's what I'm looking at.
I don't know.
I mean, we recognize that the initial implementation of the 7 times began in 723, or excuse me, it was pronounced really in 742, and then we go forward with it ending in 1798 and then subsequently in 1844. Correct?
Okay, say that again.
Okay.
It didn't make sense to me.
Pronouncement in Isaiah 7,
Yeah.
shows when Israel will no longer be a nation. And Israel is not just the northern tribes, it's northern and southern together. Right?
Yeah.
In 742, this is when Isaiah gave this pronouncement. In 723, or 19 years later, we have the northern tribes going into captivity.
Well, Hoshea being taken captive. It's going to be 2 more years before they go into captivity.
Okay. But they are no longer a nation with Hoshea going into captivity, because they're no longer self-ruling, right?
Well, it's going to be the period of 3 years. So I wouldn't just mark Hoshea's, because Northern Israel has a progression of the 4 7 times, just as Judah does.
Okay.
Theirs just happens really quickly. So it happens over a period of 3 years, but
Okay. So northern Israel happens really quickly. Judah takes a little bit longer.
yeah.
Now, in the situation, in the completion of this, by the time that they have all gone into captivity, we have a period of 65 years.
Yeah. So 19 and 46.
Okay. In the situation with the Millerites, from the time that the scripture is reopened to the time that the scripture is again sealed up, we have another period of 65 years. 1798 to 1863.
Okay. Yeah. So we get the 65 years at the end.
And the 7 times applied from 742 to 677. Right?
Yeah. For Judah. What are you saying? 742 to 677 for.
For all of Israel.
Yeah. So that's the 65 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the 7 times are applied throughout that, right? The 7, the as we would say, the 25-20 or the judgments are being applied at that point.
Yeah. Well, the first 7 times for northern Israel happens in 723, and the first 7 times for Judah happens in 677. But there's still 2, 3, and 4 for Judah. So the fourth 7 times is going to be 586.
So if we're going from 742 to 586, how much of a time period is that?
$156 years.
Is there a symbol that we can draw from the 156?
Not that I know of. Now we do have from the captivity of Hoshea to Cyrus's decree is 187 years.
Okay. So that's 31 years long.
Yeah. From 150. So 156, that's going to be 30 more years. 31 more years. Yeah, so there's 31 years between them, which is a symbol of the crucifixion. But I'm still not sure. What's that, Stephen?
Yeah, the 156 is a tenth of the weight or the number of shekels of the tribes and concerning the charges.
Okay.
Chargers.
Yeah, so there we have the 15560 with the chargers.
Right.
So that's 1/10 of it. Okay. So then it is a symbol that we can use here. I've never seen it anywhere else really, but here we can use it.
And just as we have addressed before, like the animals out of Daniel 8, that these were all animals in Daniel 8 that were used in the sanctuary, but they were not perfect. These items are also used in the sanctuary and they are perfect.
Yeah.
So this symbol of 156 being tied again with the temple is a symbol that in looking at this could be something dealing with worship that we need to pay attention to. I mean, I'm looking at charger, bowl, and spoon as in a way of looking at this as the entry into the courtyard, the entry into the holy place, and then the entry into the most holy. Because your altar of incense would have been right before the entry into the most holy.
Okay. Now, what about in Numbers chapter 7, dealing with, because we have some other numbers here.
Right. There's lots of numbers there.
Yeah, because they brought their offering before the Lord, 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen, a wagon for 2 of the princes, and for each one an ox, and they brought them before the tabernacle. So this is an offering brought to the tabernacle, these covered wagons with 12 oxen, a wagon for 2 of the princes, for each one an ox.
Okay.
And they brought them before the tabernacle. So that means I'm not sure how this works though. So these must be given, for use by the Levites or the priests. So that's one other thing.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to digress for a moment.
Okay.
The order in which the offerings are given is clockwise, according to the way that the children of Israel were to be aligned in their camps.
Oh, so that's why they're given in this. So they're going to go clockwise: Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Reuben, Simeon, Gad. So that's the reason for the order.
It's exact.
Okay.
So my question is, symbolically, is this showing us that while we are not to rely on time, we are yet to measure time?
Well, yeah. I mean, now why does the clock go in the direction it does? So it's a simple question.
The way the sun rotates, is it not?
Has to do with the sundial, right?
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So clockwise is a representation of time,
Right.
not something arbitrary. And I remember reading about the history of clockwise, what it meant, how it developed, because it is a common direction, but it has symbolic meaning.
But in this situation as well, the thing that I'm looking at, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun were the camps that were placed upon the east.
Yeah.
They would have been the ones that would have had their backs to the sun.
Okay.
Reuben, Simeon, and Gad were the ones that that had their backs to the south.
Mm-hmm.
And Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin were the ones that would have been facing east with their backs to the west. So since this started on the east and came around in a clockwise manner, is this also not a representation of how our Heavenly Father looks upon the year? That the year begins in the spring, segues to the summer, to the fall, and then to the winter, and then back all the way around.
Hmm.
I mean, the situation within this is within further next to the portion for Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, you would have had internally Moses and the house of Aaron, the priests. Internally, you would have had the family of Kohath to that of Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. Gershon would have been the internal portion next to Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And then what was called the camp of Dan on the north side would have had Merari. But I'm intrigued by the fact that the ones that are facing east with their backs toward the west were all of Rachel's children.
Yeah. And we kind of went through this before, but yeah, in relationship here, it connects to these offerings. Because we looked before at how when they go out to war, what order they would go in,
Right. But
or when they marched. Yeah.
this 1,560 or 156, especially with its connection with the destruction of the temple. I mean, here we have something that is being presented as an offering for the services of the temple. So they are sanctified for the use in the temple. And then at the end, we have the destruction that befalls the temple, and these items would no longer have been there.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, there's lots here. The one thing that I still want to go back to. So if we have the Moses sets up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month, and then you have the 12 days in a row that they dedicate the altar. You're going to have these period of 13 days. And again, 13 days is 18,720 minutes, right?
Right,
So you have that representation there as well.
exactly. So we have that representation of time. At the end, we have a representation of the 144,000. And in the midst, we have a symbol that could be used also as a representation of time.
Mm-hmm. Now, something intriguing. I mean, we have this number 18720. Now, it's a number that happens to be that fits with the 2520 as far as the divisors and so forth. So, so we have this number that's mathematically has these relationships to the basic biblical numbers, basic symbols. And, somebody can say, well, this number is obviously going to be represented in lots of different ways because it has so many divisors that are very common. But the very fact that we ended up with this symbol of 18720 it wasn't like we chose this number. It was chosen for us unrelated to its numerical value, right? July 18, 2020. It wasn't derived because we had some mathematical calculation that gave us this number to create the date July 18, 2020. It came as a result of Samuel Snow's letters, Ezekiel's symbol of the 10th day of the 5th month, and Josiah Litch's Revelation 9 symbol of the 26th day of the 4th month. And all of these other dates and numbers are also interrelated. So, the whole issue or the whole question of understanding these symbols, that they exist here and that they're connected to the 2520 and July 18, 2020 is really remarkable.
This is not chance.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not something that man just automatically says, okay, well, I'm going to make this happen. Here is a lot that has occurred thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Is recorded for our benefit for today. And yet we're just now beginning to wake up to what this is really showing.
Yeah. And then we have in our present time, in different ways, we've had all of these symbols and all these connections. So we've had them in the work that Stephen's done on putting together my chronology in these charts. We start to understand that these representations occur again and again. They occur in the ages of the patriarchs. They occur in, of course, these spans of time. And then we also see with Odilio's analysis of the present situation, we find these same symbols, especially July 18, 2020. And then we also find them in the whole analysis of the history of this movement. So this 187, and in various ways, it shows up with the manna, it shows up all kinds of ways, right? So just hundreds and hundreds of ways that these things have shown up, more than I can remember. But we see them here, and we see them in this symbolism. So we're looking at this story of Manasseh right now, but of course of the children of Israel receiving this allotment of the land, and we know it's connected to our time. So we just have more symbols, but what are these symbols telling us in particular that's going to help us now, I guess, is part of the question.
As we look at this, if I take this backwards, does the spoon, the golden spoon with the incense, is this representational of the 144,000?
Well, one of the things we have here is gold and silver is Malachi. And it's the sons of Levi, of course, that are being purified.
All right, I don't disagree.
Yeah. So we can see gold and silver represent character.
Right?
Character of the 144,000 standing out as gold. I would think yes.
Okay, so what I'm getting at in the overarching picture, if the gold is representational of the 144,000, is the silver representational of those that join this message at the end?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it depends who you mean joins this. It can't be everyone because the 144,000 are Seventh-day Adventists. So if you mean Seventh-day Adventists, yes. But it doesn't represent those that aren't Seventh-day Adventists.
I'm speaking of the silver representing this as those that
Oh,
join
okay.
at the end that may have not been Seventh-day Adventists.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, this would
I'm
represent.
looking at a separation here.
Yeah, okay. So the gold and the silver. Okay. Yeah, so the gold representing the 144,000.
Correct.
Now, remember the gold and silver in the story of Ezra?
I don't.
Okay, so when they get to the river Ahava,
Okay.
they're going to have this 3 days that they fast, and they're going to send for the Levites.
Right.
And Ezra is going to divide the gold and the silver amongst 12 of the priests.
Right.
Right. And then when they get to Jerusalem 3 days after, they're going to deliver that gold and silver to the temple.
Okay.
So the gold and silver there, we have the priests, we have the Levites, we have the Nethinim, we have the singers, we have the porters, all these different groups. But we have that gold and silver. So would we connect these?
Why couldn't we?
Yeah. So if we connect them, how do we connect them?
Well, okay. Ezra is connecting it with the temple. This is connecting the gold and silver with the temple. The point is that the 144,000 are going to be those that are going to be able to teach a message, are those of the 18720 and the 10,080, are they going to be the ones that are going to be able to proclaim the message? Because they're also going to be part of this. I mean, we know that there are going to be those that will follow the Lamb wherever he goeth. They are separated from all of the other redeemed. But it doesn't mean that all of the others that are redeemed are any less of value to God.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at this, when I was being led to go through this, it didn't come as much of a shock the number of times that 2520 or 252 or some of these other symbols were occurring.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting to see an interrelationship with 144 and July 18th, the 18,720.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how do we interrelate these three symbols with what we're seeing out of Revelation, what we're seeing out of Ezekiel, what we're seeing in Ezra, and what we're seeing here. My application is still, are these steps into the sanctuary? I mean, are these golden spoons, are they used to load the censers that the high priest takes into the most holy place? Or are these the golden spoons that bring the incense upon the altar of incense?
Well, it doesn't tell us, does it?
Well, not this chapter.
No. But these would be used in the sanctuary, these offerings.
All of it.
Yeah. So this is all for the sanctuary.
So if it's all being used in the sanctuary, this has a representation for our time today, because are we not to be the living stones of the sanctuary?
Mhm.
What else can we see here?
Hmm. Now, one thing too about the number 187 and the number 252.
Sure.
So we know that the difference between them is 65.
Right.
Right. So what have we done? Maybe Stephen has. So how have we related that? I mean, we know we have that with Enoch and all the way to the birth of Enoch, Methuselah, and Lamech. But have we made any other applications of that, dealing with the 2520 itself? I mean, it's just interesting that we have this symbol of 252 and 187 that is related to the 65 years at the beginning and the ending.
Well, with the initial applications out of Genesis, we're being shown a time period that where the earth is soon to end. Can we make that same application today?
Well, I don't think we can know when the Earth's going to end, but we definitely, part of watching and waiting is measuring the time.
Right.
And I've been working on all of these different prophecies. That is, Delio's work, Colin's work, my work, all the stuff that this movement had done regarding our time. And I'm finding that they're coming together in a more complete picture, which I haven't really shown everyone yet. But even that 65 days of that Colin has from November 8th to January 11th, which is really a period of 64 days because he's counting it inclusively. I have part of a structure that I'm not sure when I'm going to show it because it's quite involved. I'm going to basically do a series on it. It's so remarkable how all of these symbols come together as parts of something. And so there's probably even more dealing with the 1560 and the 156 that we haven't looked at before. So these parts or these divisions give us symbols. Now, Stephen often will take periods or numbers and he'll divide them by 360. Right? So, or multiply them by 360. He uses the prophetic year much more than I do. I tend to use the actual literal year of 365.242189 days. And I can bring things down to the very day in connections. And 1560 days is simply 99 days more than 4 years, right? Because 1461 is 4 years on the Gregorian calendar or the Julian, because that's 365 plus the extra leap year. And so if we look at the difference between 1560, it's 99 days difference. And 99 shows up quite a bit as well. So these even could relate to spans of time that we haven't looked at.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So 187 divided by 252 equals 0.47 or 742.
Wow.
Yeah. So we find, these divisions of numbers, we see things like dividing things, multiplying things by 911 or other different symbols that we have, or 718. Ends up, these symbols are all interconnected. So we know that they're real, and we can extend, that is, we can look at what we have studied and what we understand to be truth, and it's part of a bigger structure that we haven't seen yet, right? So the biggest structure that we see is going to go all the way back to Abraham. Besides, taking the 7, but dealing with the 2520 and the July 18, 2020 symbol. And yet all of these things fit within these, like wheels within wheels. So once we see the whole structure, we sort of can't deny any of the parts. Or I guess once we see all the parts and that they fit into a bigger structure, we can't deny the bigger structure. So once I'm finished my series on the presidents, I'm going to do a series on the complete structure. But we'll see how all of this relates. So all the things we're studying here right now are just little pieces of the puzzle. So anything else? It's 9 o'clock.
I'm thinking that this has been quite a bit today.
Yeah.
I don't really have any other comments.
I'm just wondering if any of these offerings with the silver would have been carried to Babylon and drunken by Belshazzar and stuff. I don't know. Just a thought.
Or you're talking about these, Belshazzar does take things from the temple, from Solomon's temple, but this is the tabernacle. So how much of this stuff from the tabernacle ends up in Solomon's temple, I don't know.
Okay. Interesting point to consider.
Yeah, one thing about this 156, if I took this, because sometimes I take a symbol of years, so we have the 156 years. But if I put it into a symbol and just using prophetic years and prophetic months, I'll show you what I'm doing here. So we have 156 years from 742 BC to 586.
Right.
So this number, if we multiply it by 30, so this is kind of a roundabout way, but I usually do this with literal months. So I'll take a number and I'll of that we have as a symbol, maybe as years or days or some other way, and I'll multiply it by the number of months to get a period of days. So this is 4,680 days. And then I divide it by the number of days in a year, normally 365.242. But if I do it with the prophetic months and days, I get the number 13. So the number 156 relates to the number of rebellion. So, I mean, simply, we could have done it just 13 times 12 equals 156. But you understand, so often I will use this calculation and I will come to an exact period of days. So for instance, I'll take something like 2,300 times 29.530587. Whoops, forgot the 9 there. So this is the number of days in a month, and I multiplied it by 2,300 months, and I got this number, 67,920. And if I divide this by 186, it's exactly, well, I guess I could have done it the other way, but it's exactly 186 biblical years. So I should have done it the other way, which is the number of days from the first day of the first month to the 10th day of the 7th month. But also it's exactly 187 prophetic months plus, or prophetic years plus 20 prophetic months. So it gives us the number of 18720 as well. So we're going to see how this relates in some other studies, how these symbols of years and months and days and hours and days and weeks and all these sort of things fit into our structure in ways that we can understand them in the past. That is, we can look at the past and it gives us a blueprint for the present. And that's what this movement has been doing. But the numbers give us an objective confirmation, right? So when we looked at Odilio's studies, we couldn't reject his study completely, even though I didn't agree with everything, because the numbers are correct, right?
Right.
That they're not artificially manufactured. He doesn't arbitrarily pick some dates. He looks at the dates of the mandates, for instance. And he gets these 777 days and the 780 days, and 780 days is, I can't remember what the number of seconds it is or whatever it is. But we get the symbol of July 18, 2020. And we have all of these different, I think it's the number of hours actually in 780 days. So we have all of these different witnesses, and so we accept it, but also it fits into our structure that we already have. Same with Colin's study. You know, and he's not talking about the specific time, and that is he's not doing exactly what I did with it in the study, it because you know he was just using it as symbols in our time. But we can see that the days relate symbolically in a way that we can't reject them. That is, we'd have to see the dates of these elections and so forth as guided by God and as part of our message. And they fit into a larger structure. That is, when we talk about wheels within wheels, you know, if I have a whole bunch of cogs and pins and I have this clock, and I can take all of those cogs and wheels and pins and put them together, and I have a clock that can tell perfect time. Would I assume that those were just arbitrarily chosen cogs and wheels? If I had some pieces wrong, wouldn't the clock not work?
Right.
And so if the clock works, then I have to admit that all of those pieces must be correct. Because if I have one piece that's wrong, the clock's not going to work. You need all of the pieces. So this is the way our message has unfolded. It's not been manufactured. It's been unfolded in all kinds of different ways. So, I mean, so these pieces of the puzzle that we're looking at here, we can't just dismiss them.
No.
Okay. Okay, so we went over time here. Do you want to close with prayer, Dwight?
Sure. Okay. Gracious Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the revelation of so many items that you are bringing to our attention, that you are showing us even further that you are in charge, that these things are not happenstance, they are not done by chance. They are not manufactured, they are done eons before by your wisdom. Help us today to walk humbly before you. Direct us today in all that you would have us to do. May your will be done. Help us now, Father, to follow you wherever you go. For this, we thank you. For this, we praise you. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.